If you ever worked inside a commodities trading firm, there's a particular group of visitors that very rarely generates any kind of enthusiasm: consultants. Now, on paper, this should be a well-balanced exchange. One side brings experience forged in real markets, real risk and real P&L. The other brings frameworks, methodology, and to be fair, a bunch of really good slides. But anyone who's actually sat inside a trading house knows exactly what happens the moment consultants walk through the door. Something shifts. People sit a little straighter. Language becomes careful. Decision makers grow suddenly very diplomatic. Hands are shaken, smiles are exchanged, and somewhere away from the screens that familiar eye roll appears, usually from everyone who's just been summoned into the room. This isn't about intelligence. Many consultants are extremely smart. And this isn't because firms don't want to improve. They do. We all do. The issue is simpler and more uncomfortable. In commodities, advice usually arrives faster than authority. And when that happens, very little actually changes. That's the part nobody particularly enjoys saying out loud. Now, to be fair, consultants work extremely well in certain industries. Industries where problems follow logic, where processes can be mapped, where stakeholders behave predictably. In commodities, we don't live like that. This is a market where the slide says one thing and the market does another, often at 3 a.m. If you haven't lived through a blown out spread overnight, or a missing bill of lading freezing a $50 million cargo, or a counterparty going silent mid-squeeze, then you're not stepping into a business. You're stepping into a combat zone thinking it's a Pilates class. This isn't a capability gap, it's a context gap. And here's what is often underestimated. Inside every trading house, people already know what's broken. They know the tribal workflows, the legacy systems held together with macros and hope, the empire builders protecting processes from 2010, the resistance disguised as this is how we've always done it. Diagnosis is not the problem here, execution is the problem. And execution requires one thing no consultants can bring with them. That's authority. When a trading house appoints the right leaders, real operators, real decision makers, change stops being theoretical. It doesn't require permission. It doesn't rely on politics, and it certainly doesn't need an 80-page of an alignment slide. It needs authority that is actually used. There's a familiar line heard frequently in boardrooms delivered by consultants. Commodity firms lack specialist capabilities to transform. I mean, it sounds reasonable, it sounds structured, but it also sounds like it belongs on slide 12. Because inside a trading firm, however, all that is absolute fiction. I mean, think about it. Any organization capable of optimizing shipping, storage, FX, credit, options, hedging, logistics, geopolitics, and financing within a single trade cycle across regions under regulatory pressure with a P&L moving millions by millions a minute does not suffer a capability problem. What it suffers from is something far more dangerous: a lack of internal authority to dismantle what no longer works. Over 70% of failed transformations trace back to leadership misalignment, not technology, not systems, and certainly not talent. Even ETRM projects running 200 or 300% over budget. That's rarely incompetence. It's ownership fragmentation, departments defending workflows like personal real estate. And the irony of all of this is that the traders, the schedulers, operators, they could redesign the business blindfolded. They know every bottleneck, every workaround, every shadow process. Knowledge isn't a constraint here. Permission is, incentives are, and politics are. Transformation doesn't fail because people can't do the work. It fails because the architecture of authority doesn't allow them to. Consultants often say, culture is the barrier here. I mean, it sounds elegant, it sounds academic, but it moves responsibility somewhere abstract. But culture isn't abstract. Culture is people, specific people, with names, titles, tender, and influence. In commodities, the biggest cultural blockers are incumbents with no intention of changing at all. You see it everywhere. Settlement processes built on files older than interns. WhatsApp conversations coordinating multi-million-dollar cargoes. 2 operating models, the official one and the one people actually use. When a workflow is tied to someone's personal reputation, adoption collapses, even if the new system is so much better. That isn't a cultural friction, it's protected behavior. And no consultant can override that, only leadership can. So until power structures change, no transformation, no matter how beautifully designed, is going anywhere. Which brings us to the biggest myth of them all. Consultants will drive the transformation. No, they won't. They can't. Because transformation isn't a service, it's a decision. Unclear decision rights kill momentum. Outsourced decision rights rarely stick. And in commodities, the cost of indecision is exponential. That's why ETRM migrations drag on for years, why digital projects die after pilot, while redesigns never survive rollout. These aren't technical failures. They are decision failures, ownership failures, leadership failures. The firms that get this right use consultants completely differently. They don't outsource authority, they outsource bandwidth. Accountability stays inside, decisions stay inside, and consultants become multipliers, not referees. And then suddenly things move. Everyone inside a trading house knows where the problems sit. The inefficiencies aren't subtle. The frictions aren't mysterious. And the solutions don't require genius. Which brings us to the real divide. Not intelligence, not capability, and it's certainly not insight. Leadership willingness. Nothing changes until someone inside the building says, enough. We're not dragging this system, this habit, this hierarchy, this legacy into the next decade. When that moment comes, decisions get made, and resistance loses power, and consultants become catalysts, not crutches. When it doesn't, the slides gather dust. The meetings repeat, the same fires return, and the operating model survives one more year, and then another, and then another. The firms that survive the next commodity cycles won't be the ones with the prettiest dashboards, or the ones with the most polished roadmaps, or the ones with the most expensive consultants. They'll be the ones whose leaders finally understand. Consultants can help you understand the work, for sure, but only you can do the work. And in commodities, the firms that act, not the ones that analyze, are the ones that are ultimately going to win.